Oh, good. On a walking buddy, so.
I'm Angie Braz with Partners for a Healthier Community. Some of you know me, some of you don't. So I am the resident Worksite wellness guru, broker for wellness, if you will, for the Southeast. And I'm really excited to have all of you here today, so thank you so much for coming. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Michael Rocha. I'm very excited to have him here this morning. He is a local cardiologist, works for Hawthorne, and he's not your typical cardiologist. So I like to think of him as prescribing what works, right? And our employees are our most important asset. And the three topics that we usually focus on are physical activity, nutrition, and tobacco cessation. I call them the top three. And he's going to connect us to community programs and community health education that works, really. And so I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Dr. Rocha. And,
with a show of hands, how many people feel that they're living a life in balance, mind, body, spirit, what they want to really truly be living at this point? How many people feel that they are where they want to be? How many people want to avoid seeing a cardiologist at some point? Very well. I'm a nice guy, though, right? You meet, personal, social is a good idea. Let's try to stay away from, seeing me in the office. And I really am. One of the things I'm passionate about is realizing that most of what I see, or many of the things that I see, could be preventable. We need to get to what the root cause is. And, trying to get everybody's attention, how to avoid me and put me out of business, it's a little bit funny, but there is some truth to that, though, right? So we have to really figure out ways beyond the pills and procedures in order to get people healthy. And there's many things that we can do in order to make that a reality. So I don't put this up here to be negative, but this is data, okay? We can take it for what it's worth. It's a challenge. We live in a very challenging area. South Coast, whether it's New Bedford or Fall River, we both face, as communities, the same challenges in terms of chronic diseases. We have a lot of patients, and this is data from age over 65. This is a Tufts collaborative. And age over 65, we are one of the most challenged groups of people in the state in terms of chronic diseases, including heart disease, congestive heart failure, diabetes, hypertension, and COPD. So what are we going to do about it, though? And that's the question, though. We can either accept our fate, or we can realize it's an opportunity and a challenge in order to overcome it. Not a lot of good comes from focusing on negative. It's really turning those things that are really challenges, and that's the word I want to key on here, is challenge, not negative. So, after reading about a year and a half ago in the newspaper, and as a little backdrop, I grew up in New Bedford. Okay, I went to New Bedford High School. I'm proud to have gone to New Bedford High School. I think I had some great opportunities to learn great things from great teachers, and live in a community that I really wanted to come back home to help with them. So, a year ago, I'm reading the newspaper, and the front page basically says, New Bedford is one of the least healthy areas in the state. So I look at this and go, well, I grew up down here. These are the people I grew up with, the people I take care of, or friends and family. Then we're not doing enough. Then just simply changing the dosage of your Lipitor or your blood pressure pill is not getting it done. And even if you look at what those diseases are, it's also to look at what the word happy and healthy means. It doesn't just necessarily mean that we're controlling the symptoms of your disease, but you need to be living. So I had this idea. The idea was to start, at the very least, start something simple. Start a walk. Okay, that's simple, right? Everybody can walk. So we started, the first walk was April of 2014, and we probably had about 50 people. We gathered at Buttonwood Park and went for a walk. Simple, 2 miles. And there was a lot of things that we learned from that walk. We learned that when you walk in community, you feel like you're walking together. And community is really a very important word. Community is really what brings people together and also sustains people, right? When we walk alone, things become harder to sustain themselves. When we walk together, we make the changes necessary to affect not only ourselves, but our community and bigger than that. So this is our picture on Facebook. So now, one of the nice things about 2015 is that we can be connected. We can be connected through the media in a way that we never have been able to do before. And honestly, if I had to do this group where I had to have a webmaster and all these other things, that probably wouldn't work. But we have 1,000 people now that follow us each day on Facebook. And I have friends of mine now that are doctors outside the region. Loretta Rocha, who's a international stress specialist. I like to call her doctor of laughter medicine, and she really is. Anybody that's had an opportunity, and she's already done a couple of talks for us, and has been a real supporter of this. She's blogging in. We have friends of mine that work in the community that are the other doctors, other nurses. We have people that are experts in exercise, experts in meditation, experts in nutrition. Our farmers are all in together trying to figure out how we're going to change where we are. And the data is there, people. So one of the things is that, our medical literature is overwhelmingly based on pills and procedures and all these things. Unfortunately, we don't have the kind of robust data that we'd like to have that says, hey, you know what, lifestyle makes a huge difference, and it does. So a study from the last 6 months says, this was a group of 20,000 males in Sweden. They said, basically, you live healthy, okay? And we're not talking about, we're eating healthy, which was mainly Mediterranean, is what they were looking for. Mild physical activity, walk, bike. These people were walking or biking to work, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and 1 hour of exercise. Mild alcohol intake, avoid smoking, and again, abdominal waist circumference less than 95. So no abdominal obesity. 4 out of 5 heart attacks. If you don't do those things, if you do those things, you cut the risk of heart attack down 80%. Boy, I wish I had a pill for that. Huh? But the pharmaceutical industry would be pretty happy about that. If I had a pill that basically said we could cut down 4 or 5 heart attacks. So we have to get patients and we have to get ourselves to realize that we really do participate in our care. So where do we fall down? Just to kind of, so I focus a lot on diet, exercise, stress reduction in the message that I try to portray with the New Bedford Wellness Initiative, which is as grassroots as it gets. It's not a 501c3 right now. Basically, it's an idea of a group of people in a community that have decided that enough is enough and that we really need to become healthy. So, in New Bedford, 5 fruits or vegetables a day. And actually, as I coach my soccer kids, I'm always asking, how many fruits and vegetables did you get? And they're like, 1, 2. I said, that really is going to make a difference in the way you feel. And we really fall down, from our little people to our older people in terms of getting so even the state average, one would say 5 fruits or vegetables, only 25%, and we're 5% lower. And in New Bedford, our obesity rate is 31% compared to 23. Again, this isn't negative. It's the data, it's the challenge. We're going to turn that into a positive. This is not about trying to focus in on woe is me. This is okay. This is where we are. This is where we start. So recently, I think that this is a reasonable middle ground. What do you do about nutrition? Everybody, you get one study 1 week, the next study, and everybody's fighting in the media. You've got expert here, expert there. You eat this, don't eat this. Okay. I think that the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee did a reasonably good job of approaching things from a middle ground approach. And again, vegetables, fruit, whole grains, seafood, legumes, and nuts. That's what's kind of the recommendations of trying to cut back on low and non-fat dairy products and alcohol, and reduce red meat, processed meat, lower sugar-sweet foods and refined grains. So the message, the take-home message there, okay, is cut back on the sugar, cut back on the refined grains, eat more produce, eat more real food if you really translate that down, right? One of the things they also said is that, unfortunately, because of our diet the way it is, and again, the things that we're consuming, we're missing out vitamin A, vitamin D, all these different nutrients. And part of it may be because the foods that are produced may not have the same nutrient or micronutrient value that they used to, but also we're just not consuming the right foods. And when people ask me, say, what should I eat? What should I take for a multivitamin? Or what? I said, you got to eat it. That's what you need to do. You need to eat your micronutrients, your minerals, and we're not there yet. So, to kind of take a look at, and the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, one of the diets that they recommended was the Mediterranean diet. And this was a study from about 5 years ago. They looked at patients that had risk factors for heart disease. And basically what they showed is that patients that ate a Mediterranean diet that was supplemented with nuts or olive oil were able to cut their risk down by about 30% in terms of their risk of having a cardiovascular event. A tough study. Again, there's critics of that, but at least there's some evidence to suggest. And you'd be surprised at how little evidence we really have, though, in terms of looking at what we should be recommending to patients in terms of diet, exercise, and lifestyle. But this at least gives some evidence to suggest that a Mediterranean diet, and again, the dietary guidelines, that was one of the 3 diets that they were recommending, that this is perhaps the way that we should be eating to prevent cardiovascular disease. I'm going to tell you, Brazil is like light years beyond where we need to be, okay? So if you get an opportunity to take a look at Brazil, what Brazil's done for their dietary guidelines over the last year is such a beautiful common sense approach that if we could just start to take bits and pieces of that and incorporate it into our own lives, we would make tremendous differences. So prepare meals from staple and fresh foods. And a lot of these things seem to be self-evident, but we've been drawn so far away from doing these things. Use oils, fats, sugar, and salt in moderation. Limit consumption of ready-to-consume food and drink products. Eat regular meals, paying attention in appropriate environments. Eat in company whenever possible. Buy food at places that offer varieties of fresh foods. Avoid those that mainly sell products ready for consumption. Develop, practice, share, and enjoy your skills in food preparation, cooking. We really need to go back to the kitchen. Plan your time accordingly. If you know that you're going to have a particular week that's going to be difficult, cut your vegetables on Sunday. Prepare things for the rest of the week. Those are the kind of things that trying to be ahead so that when you get stuck in a crisis, so to speak, of convenience or comfort, that you avoid that. When you eat out, choose restaurants that serve freshly made dishes. And be critical of the commercial advertisements of our food products. I don't know that it gets much better than that. It really is a common sense approach. And when we step back and we think about what we're doing in a day-to-day, what we're doing each day is so far away from that. It doesn't even approach that. And, it really boils down to Michael Pollan here, because it really does. In his book, In Defense of Food, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Let's see. Not too fast, and that didn't actually come out too well. So I added a little mindfulness to this. So there is evidence to suggest that one of the things that for weight loss is that if you are able to slow down and eat more mindfully, okay, what happens is Loretta Rocha has a great line. She says, we live on a dashboard buffet. And think about it, right? We're going through the drive-through, everything we're driving through. So we're eating and consuming calories with really not even tasting them, and before we even know that we're full. So at the end of the day, so it's not only eating more real food, it's slowing it down, okay? And the other thing is listen to your body. Certain foods for certain people, they don't jive very well, okay? And what you have to do is you have to be able to listen to yourself and say, well, I don't feel well when I eat X, Y, and Z. I feel better. And sometimes it actually, almost in a way, you have to detox your body, from eating too much sugar, from eating some of the wrong foods. And before, you might have to go into almost a withdrawal type syndrome where you're feeling like you're craving these things before you start to feel better. But that's the problem, is some of the foods that we eat are very addictive. You know, sugar actually, I've seen areas that they say sugar is 6 times addictive as cocaine. And if you watch the movie Fed Up, which we showed last fall, Fed Up basically said that if you take rats that are addicted to cocaine and give them the opportunity to take sugar water or cocaine, they go for the sugar water. So it's more addictive than cocaine. So that's what our problem is, right? So our problem is how have we gotten to where we are? Michael Moss's book, Salt, Sugar, Fat, is brilliant. I don't know how he was able to get on the inside on some of these things, but it really uncovers how the food industry has really changed since the 60s. And it really is. It's a combination of salt, sugar, and fat. Instead of getting back to real food, we've gotten away from the kitchen. We've gotten away from the farm. We've gotten away from the garden. We need to get back there. You know, if we really want to heal ourselves, and I'm not just talking heart disease, we're talking about so many other things, okay, in medicine, then we really need to make sure that we get back to real food. This study was, again, one of the ones that's a driving force right now behind a lot of what legislation and ideas across the globe are in terms of sugar consumption. You know, this study basically showed you eat too much sugar, okay, you're going to end up with a higher chance of having cardiovascular disease. You know, let's just take a look here. Those are the number of cubes of sugar that are in these beverages, and this is just an example. You know, again, you can take so many things, and this is the extreme, the soda, right? But you'd be surprised at how many things on the shelves of the supermarket have added sugar you would never think about. And you know, you're fighting this battle all the time, especially when I see patients that think, oh God, I'm not eating that much. You know, I don't understand. I'm not losing weight. I'm not eating that much. You know, and so it's really the quality, not just the quantity of the food, because a calorie really isn't a calorie in terms of the way the body is going to metabolize it. So regular consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages has been associated with elevated cardiovascular disease risk. Now, the beverage industry is very upset about this, right? Because that's why, you know, if you look as to what's going on, there's a lot of lobbying, there's a lot of back and forth. The WHO, the World Health Organization, finally came out and said that no more than 10% of your calories should be coming from added sugar. And that's been met with a lot of backlash. But underneath the hood, which nobody really talks about, the American Heart Association has actually said for years that your added sugar for adult male shouldn't be more than 36 grams or 9 teaspoons. For a female, 24, 6 teaspoons. And for a kid, 16 or 4 teaspoons. If you really think about it, most people will consume that before they even walk out the door in the morning. It's off the charts, right? You know, if you start to talk, and hopefully the FDA will actually follow through with what they're trying to do, because the idea is, let's actually tell people what's in their food finally. Let's tell them how much added sugar. Let's tell them what a real serving size is, because it can become very misleading. It's a challenge to go to the supermarket, right? Read the labels. You're like, oh my God, what's really in this, right? You know, try to eat foods. My advice is try to eat foods that don't have labels. That's my best advice to you today is to try to be able to do that more often than not. I throw these in because there's always continues to be controversy. And this is exactly, you know, to people can agree or disagree on some of these things, okay? The association between dietary whole grain and the risk of mortality, that again, it's not a randomized study, but there was, with whole grain consumption, a decreased mortality and decreased cardiovascular mortality. We can debate this, okay? And again, it's not the best study in the world. And I would caution people that in general, if you are going to eat whole grains, okay, I would think about oatmeal, brown rice, quinoa, those kind of things, rather than a lot of the processed foods. Again, I would try to, that's my take on it. But again, the data is what the data is. The other thing is in terms of saturated fat, it's coming. They did a meta-analysis a couple of years ago looking at the different fats, and trans fats was really the one that was clearly defined as being increased risk, which is the man-made fats with increased cardiovascular disease. But let me tell you, both of these things, you should see the back and forth. Again, unfortunately, most of these studies that we look at are registry studies. It's not like we give one patient this to eat this, don't eat this. It's more like, okay, what have you been eating for your last 10 years? And so most of these are surveys, and most of these are recall in terms of what they're eating. So it's hard, it's dirty data, but we have to do the best we can. And people are allowed to have differing opinions because that's important, because hopefully we'll have differing opinions, and at some point we'll come up with the answers that we need. Oops. Sorry. Okay. So when we're looking at, we all get the questions, how do we lose weight? And there's every diet plan under the sun, right? The reality is this study looked at a couple of years ago and said that if you reduce your macronutrients in any particular way, you probably can lose weight. Okay? This study, I think, is very important, and this is out of Tulane, is about 180 patients, and actually this was randomized. And what it showed is that patients that were on a restricted carbohydrate diet lost more weight, and their cardiovascular risk factors, their triglycerides, their HDL, and their C-reactive protein, which we're learning more about inflammation, were all improved compared to a lower fat diet. Now, the low fat camp basically says it wasn't low fat enough. Fair enough. But the bottom line is that patients that were in the arm for lower carbs lost about 12 pounds versus 4 pounds in those in the lower fat. So there is evidence, okay, to suggest that if we restrict our carbs, we may have more of a benefit, okay? So how do we do this, right? So how do we approach, or how do we start getting the right foods on people's tables? Well, a lot of effort and a village. So Kim Ferreira here is a good friend of mine who is the director for Mass in Motion in New Bedford. Her and I have been working together for the last couple of years, and the work that she's doing is fantastic, okay? She has identified markets that are in food deserts, and in order for them to be recognized, they have to take the produce, the fruits and vegetables, and put them kind of at the front so people are able to have that accessible. So we have many food deserts, and we need to make sure that these markets are providing the right foods for people, because unfortunately, most of the time when you go to a convenience store or a market, that's not exactly what's being promoted. So that's at least one step. The other thing that she's done is that there's a healthy dining venues in New Bedford. So I think that's up to about 12 or so. If you go on their website, you can learn more about that. But people have to actually have demonstrated in their establishment that they have options that are healthy. If you want to take that back to whatever your workplace is, then again, these concepts are transferable to whatever your location may be. Is that therefore, wherever you are, there has to be healthy options. Okay, and that's a challenge, right? Because the vending machines and all these other things, but you have to fight against that because if you really want your staff to be happy and healthy, they need to eat the right foods, right? If they're not eating the right foods, they're crashing, okay? They're getting sick, they're out of work. It really is that important. It's hard to measure those things. But let's face it, if you're not eating the right foods, you're not going to necessarily be able to fight off diseases. The other thing that I didn't add to this slide yet is Kim now. There's SNAP benefits in New Bedford, all 3 farmers markets. This is brilliant. Again, the people, I had a patient last year said to me, look, Doc, I can't afford to eat healthy. How can I do this? And we need to make those SNAP benefits, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal that we have to make those benefits accessible to the people that need them, okay? Because there are people out there that struggle with financially being able to afford these things. And this, I can't wait to see this roll out this summer. They've really beefed up the farmers markets in New Bedford, and my hat's off to their efforts. And keeping in mind, though, not a lot of people know that the agricultural partnership, Southeastern Mass Agricultural Partnership exists, which is kind of an umbrella for all the farms and farmers markets. And they're, again, they're doing some great work. They're doing some outreach. They're really trying to make sure that our agricultural brothers and sisters are coming together and really providing what we need for our communities. But getting back, you have to be able to cook. You can't just give people the raw, here, take this. and it sits on your shelf. Okay, we need to be able to teach them how to cook. This is the farmers market at Acushnet. They teach cooking. This is at the Boys and Girls Club in New Bedford. And this is City Councilor Henry Bousquet that did this cooking demonstration in Dartmouth last year. And amen. Finally, athletes doing the right thing. So, you know, unfortunately, most of our athletes are giving our kids the wrong message, right? They paid a lot of money. They paid a lot of money to promote things that aren't healthy. And on top of it, foods that they wouldn't eat. They wouldn't eat them. You know, LeBron James the other day actually was interviewed and was talking about McDonald's. And he basically had said, oh, at the beginning of my career, I used to eat McDonald's, or something along those lines. And then he realized that he makes $4 million a year from them. And kind of, everything, kind of blah, 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 blah. So unfortunately, we're giving them the wrong message. And if we really want the next generation to prevent them from seeing me at age 25, 30, 35, then we really need to make sure that our kids are a priority. And, fruits and vegetables, that actually is part of the Partners for a Healthier America that Michelle Obama has really been pushing for. Now they've got people like Stephen Curry, plays for Golden State Warriors, Cam Newton, who's an NFL quarterback, and several others, just to call them. They're coming out, they're doing videos, they're doing promotion for eating fruits and vegetables. And they're not making the kind of money that the other people are. It's the right thing to do. And that's the kind of message that we need to get behind. It's not just a good idea. It causes suffering. When people don't eat the right foods, they come to see me. I don't want to see them. I don't want to see them in the office. I want to see them out walking. That's where I want them. And these things have to change at higher levels, right? We vote, so when we go to the supermarket, you take out your wallet and you pay, right? And one of the things is that what you're paying for isn't necessarily, all those costs are not really known to you, right? So those costs actually go up next level in government, all the way up to the lobbyists and all the other things that people are doing in order to produce our food. So I love telling Tim Ryan's story because it's fascinating. Here's a guy that is a congressman from Ohio. His first book he writes is on mindfulness, okay? He meets John Kabat-Zinn, who's one of the gurus of the mindfulness movement and has been so for the last 34 years, goes on a retreat, is inspired, and takes it back to Congress. So now that they have meditation weekly in Congress, and writes a book. Now, one would say, kind of Ohio's probably a pretty conservative kind of state. He gets reelected. Brilliant, right? So they still go with this. Now the next thing he's taken on, basically in the last year, he's written a new book. And part of it was probably his wife had gotten ill. He had to he took her to see someone that was a functional medicine doctor. And the light bulb went on that our food is making us ill. So he's now written a book called Real Food Revolution. And he talks about making sure that we're going back to our farms and changing them from the large commodity crops and going, we need to go back to small and medium-sized farms, subsidize and support them, and get real food. Brilliant, right? So that's the kind of people that we need to support. I'd love, we're talking about some of these other people that are throwing their hat in the ring for the presidential election. I'd love somebody like this that would actually stand up and do the right thing for what's really going to make a difference for healthcare. We talk about all these things for healthcare, but we're not talking about well care. We're talking about ill care. So, coming back to what our challenges are. So our challenges continue also to be physical activity. So in New Bedford, we're about 15% lower in terms of any physical activity in a month. Our walk score is actually very high. So our community has an 80, I don't know what this walk score exactly means, but it means that we're very walkable. Okay, that means that there are opportunities for us to get out and move. So we don't have a lot of excuses, right, in terms of a community. And I would say that Buttonwood Park is a fantastic 2-mile walk. It really is. whatever your pace is. So we need to get people moving. The benefits of walking, it's on this slide, reduces your heart attack risk, weight management. I had a patient yesterday say to me, you know what, when I go for a walk or exercise, the next day my blood sugars tend to be pretty good. I don't walk, I can tell the next day my blood sugars are going to be up. So it improves your diabetes control, improves your mood. We know that walking is good for both your mind and your body. It strengthens your bones. Again, it helps with balance. These are all the things that we struggle with. Chronic disease, falls, balance, all these other things. Which is exactly why I started with a walk, right? It's simple. It doesn't, there's no numbers. It's not a 5K. We're not raising money. We're raising awareness. We're raising so that people can get healthy. So we happen to walk at Buttonwood Park. What is stopping people from coming up with a walk around wherever they work or wherever else? That at lunch, even if you don't have a track or any place, a group of people go for a walk. We're going to walk, for the next 20 minutes. We're going to walk for the next 30 minutes. And do it as a group. It has to be simple. It doesn't have to be, well, we put in this new gym, we need to do all these activities, etc. No, walk simple, okay? And at this point, we've had over 1,000 people walk in the last year. We kept it going. So, when people said, what are you going to do in the winter? Well, we're going to go to the mall. And that's what we did. We went to the mall. You have to be creative, and you have to be flexible, and you have to listen to people that have good ideas. One of the things that's important, when you're the leaders of some of what's going on in your organization, you have to go, wait a minute, maybe somebody's got a good idea of some place. And, I'm always listening to, oh, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe we should try to go X, Y, and Z. We'll go to the mall. We'll go someplace else. And this lady should be an inspiration for all of us, okay? So she's 80 years old. This picture was taken at Worcester Medical Center. And this says it's 7.5 times around, and you get a mile. This lady has walked at least, so it's over 1,000 miles now, right? So walked around this atrium for over 1,000 miles, 80 years old, okay? What's our excuse? That's what it comes down to. What's our excuse? If this lady can be dedicated to do that, and look at her smile. I mean, really, she's proud of that, and she should be. This lady should be an inspiration for us, for all of us. And it doesn't have to be necessarily walking. There's a whole host of things. So I don't know if anybody who's followed the Facebook group knows that usually Fridays is kind of the time at the end of the week that we do, wherever I might be, that we try to do 5 or 10 minutes of standing yoga. And the thing is that maybe I should start running a study. Maybe we'll randomize it to the people that are standing versus the people that are actually practicing. There's probably the people that are watching us or laughing, which that's actually good. That lowers the stress hormones, right? And then there's the people that are performing it. And I've had people afterwards that, wow, we just did that for 2 minutes and I feel like I'm back where I am because we're dealing with stress. So it's not only good for strengthening, for balance, for stretching, but it makes you feel good. And that's good. So, I think that, again, I use these as examples, but there's all sorts of different ways, whether it's Tai Chi, or Qigong, or yoga, or stretching, or aerobics. Do what you like, but move, okay? And make sure, again, when you do it with groups of people, it sustains itself, okay? These two people are really luminaries in terms of what they're doing. Jordan Metzel has got this iron strength program. So in New York City, all over the city, at like 6 o'clock in the morning at different times, they're doing these high intensity interval trainings. He's got this book, and he really is getting out there and getting people moving in the morning. John Rady, who's a psychiatrist, has written extensively on the effect of exercise as it applies to mental illness. And we're seeing more and more studies that say, guess what? Helps your depression. Do you know what one of the first-line therapies for depression is in the United Kingdom?
Walking.
Walking and exercise. So don't underestimate that. It goes on my script pad when people need it. that's one of the first things I put down. The side effects are all positive. This one didn't come out so well, so I'm going to have to change this one. But the bottom line is the AHA recommendations for cardiovascular health basically says 150 minutes of moderate activity a week, or less if you're doing high intensity. My bottom line is move every day for about 20 minutes a day, somehow, some days faster, some days slower, mix it up, and you'll be on the path to what you need to do. And everybody says, well, what dose? What do I need to do? Personally, I think that if we do to the extremes, either nothing or too much, it's exactly that. You know, how many times if we don't listen to our bodies and we overdo it and we're sore for 3 days, etc. You know, again, sometimes when you're starting a new program, you might be sore. But if you're doing things that are harming your body, and then rewarding yourself afterwards with whatever that defeats the purpose. So that's actually really interesting. Is some people say, well, I worked out at the gym and I need, and then I went and ate this because I deserved it. You're like, no. What you need to do is actually, the activity should be the enjoyment and not the reward afterwards. So, and also in terms of what counts, right? The Copenhagen study that came out in the last 6 months said, leisure joggers, probably I think it was up to like 5 or 6 miles. Don't quote me on that exactly, but it wasn't a lot and it wasn't too fast. And it had a big difference in terms of their mortality compared to people that didn't. And actually, the people at the higher end of the spectrum that were more strenuous in their activity did a little worse. However, the patients at that extremes, there wasn't a large sample size, so you have to be very careful about that. But I would say is that a little bit counts, okay? And keep doing it. You know, again, another study that basically, this is not people that didn't run, those who ran less than 6 miles, ran slower than 6 miles an hour, and just ran 1 to 2 times per week, there was a significantly reduced mortality compared to people that didn't do anything. So a little bit goes a long way. And again, there was a study that was looking at patients that, in terms of weight, stratifying them, okay, overweight, more overweight, etc. And that, you know, what really made a difference in terms of cutting down their mortality was the differences in terms of their activity level, whether they were sedentary, mildly active, moderately active. So even for people that struggle with their weight, they've got to keep moving. You've got to keep moving, and it's really important for your health. I like to talk about for people that are really stuck for time, which sometimes I am in the morning, is I will do high intensity interval training for 4 or 7 minutes, and there's apps on your phone. They can either be there's a 4-minute Tabata workout or a 7-minute workout. So you can get get your heart rate up, and there's evidence that just doing this a couple of times a week, these kind of activities can have large increases in your aerobic functional capacity, work economy, reduce blood pressure, and also improve fasting glucose levels. So even if you don't have 20 minutes, half hour, it's probably a way to get something in, okay? And you probably can get a lot out of it. And there's more and more data that people are looking at these high-intensity interval training. And if you want to do a little bit of interval training, even walking, pick up the pace. You know, there's some people that will walk between poles, right? Go a little faster, a little slower. So you can change your intensity in terms of what you do, and it's simple, okay? So let's get into mood, right? So mood and stress. Now we're going to delve into where I think that a lot of us get hung up on, because it affects so many other things. Because if you're not feeling good, and you're not in balance, and your mind's not in the right place, you're not taking care of your body either, right? You're not taking care of a whole bunch of things. So the importance is that we have to say, okay, we have to start with emotionally and psychologically and spiritually, where are we at? We have to check in on ourselves. And again, our challenges in New Bedford, more depression. Satisfied with life, about 10% lower. So here we go. This was the cover of Time magazine about 8 months ago. And I think that this is starting to come out of the fact that people aren't balanced, aren't happy. They want to find something else. We're connected We're connected by this all the time, right? Yet we're not connected. So we may be connected, but when we sit down with people, we're no longer talking to them, right? You know, we have all this technology and all this interconnectivity, but we're less connected than we've ever been at any time. So how do we get back to where we need to be? Who are we? You know, how do we find ourselves, so to speak? So this is out of the Journal of American Medical Association, right? One of the top medical journals. And they basically took a look at all the studies that looked at mindfulness meditation for certain endpoints. And they said that there's moderate evidence to support improvements in anxiety, depression, and pain. And that's the tip of the iceberg. There continues to be an explosion of studies that are looking at meditation, mindfulness, and how it's affecting people in many, many different ways. And they're backing it up with science. They're backing it up with functional MRI scans. So it's not just, quote, a woohoo West Coast kind of thing, make you feel good. It actually has data that says, guess what? We can see your brain change when you start to do these activities. This is my good friend. I actually spoke with him last night. He always gives me some words of wisdom. John Pierre Marks. John Pierre is a behavioral and spiritual therapist. He lives in San Diego, and we've kind of gained a connection. His quote is, "A human being cannot be divided into parts. The whole must be considered in order to find the balance in physical, mental, and spiritual health." And it's true. If certain things are out of balance in your life, are you taking care of yourself the right way? You can look at it collectively. If certain things in your organization may be out of balance, right? Are things working the way you want to? And those are really hard because we always have metrics for everything. We always say, okay, well, we did this and we can see, bottom line stuff. But some of the things we talk about here, you can't really have a clear bottom line, right? It's hard to measure those kind of things. But you see it translate into days out of work. You see it translate into illness. When your body is stressed and you're not taking care of yourself, your immune system goes out. It'll happen to all of us. I overdid it. I got a cold. I feel lousy, right? I overdid it. And we've all said that, right? We all know that. And what does that mean? You're saying that you're out of balance. And the other thing is we've got to remember, we can't take ourselves too seriously. At the end of the day, there has to be a lightheartedness. And she reminds me of this all the time, is that in her talk, Mind Your Stress, she's brilliant. Anybody who has not had an opportunity to experience one of Loretta's talks, she's also, because, for example, healthcare is struggling so much with its internal stress, she's being asked every week to go and speak to different healthcare groups. Dana-Farber Cancer Institute a couple weeks ago. Everybody's going, we've never been at a more stressed out level. If you're stressed, it doesn't work for everybody. We're trying to get more and more out of people, but we're doing it in such a way that's getting less and less out of them, right? So we have to do it. We have to be able to put on the clown nose every once in a while and make people laugh. And these gentlemen here are really, again, in terms of the pioneers, in terms of mindfulness and meditation. John Kabat-Zinn, Full Catastrophe Living. It's a great book. I probably recommend that to patients at least 2 or 3 times a day, because there's chapters on work stress, there's chapters on life stress, on family stress, and understanding yourself, right? And that's the written version of his mindfulness-based stress reduction program. And this book in the middle of the 70s basically says the relaxation response says, guess what, people? Your stress hormones go up, your catecholamines go up, but stress is bad for you. And we need to figure out, in some of his work, it was more transcendental meditation, whereas John's is more mindfulness-based meditation. But again, they're reaching for the same thing. How do you unlock the relaxation response? And guess what? You can do it other ways. You can do it with a warm bath, a walk, a hobby, something that makes you laugh. All of those things break the stress cycle. And that's what we all have to find. Because some people say, meditation's not for me. Okay, that's fine, that's all right. We've got to find something else that works for you. And actually yesterday somebody said to me, I tried doing some of the meditation you talked to me about, but really actually prayer helps. I said, that's meditation, right? And we forget about that, is that these are the kind of simple things that if you cultivate, You know, and sometimes people know that, but sometimes it's either giving them the permission to do those things or the encouragement to remind them to get back to things that they used to, because sometimes we get hijacked. Our minds get so caught up in all the things that are going on that we don't know where we are. We've forgotten where our rudder is. And the thing about meditation or mindfulness or these practices is it brings you back to where you are. Yesterday's gone, tomorrow does not exist. The only place you can be is here. And they've done studies that say the people that are really present are happier. They really are. Because they're not worried about tomorrow. And I will tell you, all the patients that I take care of that are 90, 100, they've already taught me what the fountain of youth is. They get up every day and they're grateful. They don't worry about whether this is their last day. And some of them have incredible challenges that I look at them and go, I don't know how you keep going every day, but they have the biggest smile. And the thing is the fountain of youth is found by living your life. Living your life, not dying your life. That's the problem is so many of us are dying inside that we're actually not living our lives. And that goes for people that are younger to older. And, Jessica. So this is what's possible, people. Cushionet Company has a meditation room. And they've dedicated themselves to making sure that worksite wellness is a top priority. Okay? I work in healthcare, and I'm I don't want to say this, but I don't know of too many places in terms of healthcare organizations, which this is about health, we're not doing that, right? We're not reaching the healers. We're not reaching the patients. We have to heal the healers before we heal the patients. And in order to do so, we have to deal with stress. 50% of doctors, about 50% of doctors are burnt out. About 34% of hospital nurses on the floors are suffering from burnout. We need to make sure that we have tools in the toolbox to deal with it. And that goes for all work sites. Okay, there has to be, and it's simple again. Remember I said at the beginning, go for a walk. Just get people to realize start a walking club. And just say, we're going to walk 5 minutes at lunch. You know, we're going to put our phones down, we're not going to answer anything, we're just going to go walk. You know, and you could even cultivate, I could say, that you don't even need a meditation room. You just need some space, so to speak, that's quiet, and you could set up simple meditations. So it's all possible. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be a room. It has to be people and space. I take it back to, for example, the one thing that I love out of the Grinch. So the Grinch is, the one aha moment is, right, is that the Who's, all their stuff is gone. Yet they couldn't take Christmas away, right? It's the people. What we learn in life, it's about people. It's not about things. And when you realize that, then we all do the right thing. And we step out of ourselves and realize that the things that are not going to bring true happiness or inner peace can never be bought. Ever. Ever. And unfortunately, we live in a world that's having a real struggle with that. We're really having a hard time understanding who we are. But it's there. We just have to look within. We have to take the mirror and go, who are we right now? Where are we? Where are we starting from? How can we do this? How did we get here? Those are the questions we have to ask ourselves. And if you don't think for 2 seconds, it breaks my heart that anger leads to heart attacks. We know that people that have an angry encounter in the first 2 hours afterwards, guess what? Their risk of heart attack goes up. This isn't make-believe. This isn't just a little idea. This is a real endpoint. This is what I take care of. Is it really worth it? There's a book written by a cardiologist in the early 80s, Robert Elliott, that basically said, the title of his book, Is It Really Worth Dying For? And so he is 40 years old in the early 80s, go get him, he's trying to work his way up the ladder, work his way up the ladder. He's angry, he's frustrated, and trying to force things, the system. Well, guess what? He's out giving a talk. has a heart attack and he checks himself into the hospital, he puts himself in the intensive care unit, in that hospital he's given the talk and says, oh, guys, I'm having a heart attack, and he was. What else do we need to realize that stress is killing us? Behind what we do in terms of our behaviors, our diet, our maladaptive behaviors such as smoking, drugs, drinking. So it really is that important. It really is going to change the way we deal with each other and ourselves. We have to deal with ourselves first, and then we can help others. There's another thing known as broken heart syndrome. So they may not have a heart attack, but actually when people have a very traumatic episode in their lives, they also can have broken heart of Takotsubo. Takotsubo was actually a Japanese octopus jug, and the heart actually balloons out at the bottom and looks like an octopus jug. Thankfully, this is rarely fatal. But the heart function goes to 50%. So when we look for examples of mind-body connection, this is like the ultimate. I can't even, heart attacks would be one, but if you can actually, because of a traumatic experience, cause your heart function to go to half, that's not make-believe, people, right? That's real. That's like, I see that. And the good news is over a couple of weeks it usually gets better. So we have to have the tools in the toolbox that we're not being taught as kids, right? Nobody's talking to us about these things. We're like, how do I deal with my stress? We're always like trying to figure that out. And when I looked at myself at some point, I realized I didn't have a lot of tools in the toolbox at some point. In panic, how many visits do patients come to see me for panic? My heart's racing. Actually their heart races more because they've been seen by their primary care and 3 weeks go by and they haven't seen me yet. And they feel like their blood pressure's up and they're like, I think my heart's going to blow out of my chest. And actually it turns out that something else is going on in their lives. And I kind of say, I will tell them that it's not your physical heart, it's your emotional heart that's the problem. And that's what we need to tell them, right? Unfortunately, sometimes we err on the testing instead of saying what it really is, right? It's your heart, but it's not this heart. And we need to do a better job of dealing with that. And that's why I think the Eastern practitioners, oftentimes do better because they listen, they participate in the care of the patient, they have a better relationship, and they have a conversation. That's what we need to put back as being a priority in Western medicine. It's there, but that really has to be something that is risen from where we're at right now. Because so stress causes your heart rate to go up, the headaches, chest pain, panic, blood pressure. Okay, so that's a problem, right? Something we've got to deal with. And sleep, don't underestimate sleep, okay? People that sleep less than 5 or greater than 9, bad for your heart. Sweet spot's probably about 7 to 8 hours, okay, in general. Now, everybody's different, right? Some people can live off of 5 hours, some people, but I would tell you that sleep is critically important. I mean, how do you feel the day after you don't sleep well? You don't feel so good, right? Like, oh my God, And actually, when you're tired, it's actually interesting, when you're really tired, you can't function, right? You're in a fog. You can't drive the car the same way, right? You're in a fog. I mean, it happens to all of us, So don't forget the word community. So I'm coming back to community. And I talked about the challenges for New Bedford, which goes the same for Fall River, for this whole area, for all of us. But communities really are what change. Okay, this community in Franklin, this is Franklin, Maine. They basically sat down to say, okay, what are the simple things that we can do to make a difference? And they cut their cardiovascular risk down. Blood pressure, diabetes monitoring, making sure the cholesterol's, exercise. And, they basically showed with this that they really did better than most parts of the state in terms of addressing that and cutting down their cardiovascular risk. And it's simple. It's because people care, right? It's simple things. Make sure people's blood pressure, make sure that all these things are being monitored. And this is a great story. Rosetto doesn't get any better than this, right? So Pennsylvania, 1955 to 65. And this town in Pennsylvania was a strongly Italian-American community, hardworking. And the community next to it was about the same. However, for about a 10-year period, they had dramatically less risk of heart attack deaths. And when they looked at everything, Rosetta's fat, booze, and cigarettes, but zero heart disease. So, they're sitting there and smoking the cigarettes. So it actually wasn't their risk factors. And what they really looked at, the only thing they could really come up with was because it was a community, right? It was a very strong Italian. Everybody had a sense of community. They were all in this together. We're all interconnected in terms of the way we interact. And people look out for one another, right? So there is that other aspect of things that you can't really put your finger on. That people are looking out for one another. And that you may not have necessarily all the perfect habits, but if you all look out for one another, we probably can get it done. And that's why I talk about the New Bedford Wellness Initiative. It is a community, right? It's a community of people. These are friends of mine, right? Mike Kudo's done logo work, and we make noise before the walks. Mark Kruger, who was on The Biggest Loser. Laura Caton Brokel at the Down to Earth. Phil Paleologos, who donated his time when we showed the movie. My friend Jonathan Felix, who's a fantastic meditation teacher. Tanya Feek, who went to high school with me. She's a doctor up in New Hampshire. Tim Donahue, who's trying to get our kids healthy through Yoga Kids Inc. and is pleading in New Bedford to open up to him and allow him to work with the kids that need it most. Okay? And my good friend here, David Weed. It's about stepping outside ourselves. I'm excited that, the fitness challenge went on this year. It was the first step in New Bedford. It was successful. I enjoyed being part of it. The walks that we did at the mall were part of that, okay? And I also had the opportunity to speak at the end of the event, and also at the beginning to do a question and answer. And that's what we really need to do. We need to be able to have a dialogue, a conversation. Listen to what people do that's working well, and start where it's a priority. The other innovative ideas is really, what can we use? What things are out there that can really help us to think about things differently? This documentary, Fed Up, which we showed last fall, was very well attended. And look, there's a community of people that participated in this. Community nurses, Diagnosis Life, Partners for Healthier Fall River, WJFD Silverbrook, Down to Earth, okay, Hawthorne. And so we all came together and we showed the movie that said basically we really need to think about our car problem and how food is processed. And then in the fall, I was able to invite Jeff Rediger, who's a psychiatrist that's looking at people that spontaneously recover. Why do you get better? You shouldn't get better. You got cancer. I don't understand. So he's looking at these people and studying them, and he's going to be working on a book. And my friends Mario Torres and Dr. Kim Duramo, both of them that do mind-body medicine. So we showed this movie, The Connection, Mind Your Body. It was looking at John Kabat-Zinn, Herbert Benson, and all these luminaries to try to figure out, okay, we really do participate in our care. We really, how our mind-body connection really does affect us. And how can we approach this? And they talked about things such as yoga, meditation, and just the different ways of looking at, coming at disease processes. And I'm not saying that all these things that we've discussed today are going to cure things, but certainly can help you to live your life. No matter, I have patients that are not going to be with me too long. But the important thing is to focus in on living that life the way they want to. And that happens for all of us. At whatever point in life we are, we should be living. Okay? We all put off towards Friday. Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have a restaurant named Thank Goodness It's Friday. Yes! My next vacation. Yes! We need to enjoy each day. That we live life each day. That we don't look for. I mean, how many times, I love this, somebody's burnt out, they go on vacation, they come back, two things happen through the roof, right? How many people have seen, like the coworkers, they came back from vacation, like, oh my God, they should be relaxed. What's their problem? They came back and they blow up. How many people have seen that? Show of hands. Like, vacation helps, isn't it? So the vacation, I'm not saying that it's not important to recharge. It is. It's absolutely important to recharge. But you have to be able to be recharged every day. If you're just recharging and coming back to the toxic environment or things that are unresolved, well, they're still unresolved. You know, you may have taken a time out, so to speak, but if you didn't work on things during that time out, you're going to be thrown back in the fire. I know that smoking is something that, you know, we're all struggling with, you know, in terms of, you know, in my own practice. It's a terrible habit. It causes so much harm. I would at least leave this up here. Craving to Quit is an app for your phone. It's a 21-day program to quit smoking. It's free, and it's mindfulness-based. Judson is actually one of the professors in the Center for Mindfulness. I'm hoping, we've been talking about trying to have a program in New Bedford where we're able to do this with some support. But even if you don't have support, you know, Craving to Quit, it's free. It teaches patients mindfulness. It bugs them when they're smoking. It tells them how much they're saving, okay? It's there with them to be a coach, okay? And it's going to be coming out in Spanish. I don't know when, but he said that he's working on that. So this is my office, okay? I routinely lend this book to patients for stress reduction. John Pierre is Wake Up to Life. I really am trying to put myself out of business if people eat more kale. There's books in my office for patients when they're sitting there, of various. Some of them are entertaining. Some of them are actually to teach a lesson when I'm like, hey, you need this book, okay? We do Friday yoga, and you know, we have to have a sense of humor in life, right? It really is. Life is too short, you know, and I see that every day. I really like what I do, and I have a unique opportunity to participate in patients' lives, and I respect that. You know, one at a time. Every relationship, and I mean this, each patient is a relationship. And also the community is a relationship to me if I look at it from a bigger picture. I really feel connected. And that's why when Dave asked me to come and speak here, and Angela, I think it's so important that as doctors that we get outside the office, outside the closed doors, and we have to advocate for patients. We have the data, we have the information, we have the know-how to stand up against some of the things that are harming us. And there's a lot of things at a lot of different levels that we need to stand firm on. And one of the things I like to say is we need to kind of be peaceful warriors. This is not about fighting, right? This is about standing up and standing firm. And that's what we have to do. This is not about, quote, waging war on, this isn't about Braveheart, right? You know, where we got the battle armor out. But this is about doing the right thing peacefully. And we can do this. We all can do this. We all can participate in our own way. Each one of us who walks out of here today is going to have the opportunity to impact others around you. And then that trickle, that all of a sudden, that sphere of influence starts to continue to grow. And because it feels right, because it's the right thing to do. So this slide here, it pretty much sums it up. I don't feel well, and I'm not sure why. I want you to meditate for 20 minutes twice a day, exercise for at least 30 minutes a day, avoid processed foods, eat plenty of organic fruits and vegetables, spend more time in nature, less indoors, stop worrying about things you can't control, and ditch your TV. Come back in 3 weeks. It's true. Since preventive medicine, this is Bernard Lown. This book here, I teach nurse practitioner students from UMass. So there's two books. Everyone that comes and spends time with me has to read this book beforehand. It's The Lost Art of Medicine, Practicing Compassion in Medicine. And Bernie is actually a cardiologist. He has his own cardiovascular institute. I don't know how much he's practicing. He's in his 80s, but this book is brilliant. Since preventive medicine, though recognized as the most cost-effective approach to illness, is time-intensive, it is completely neglected. Chance of survival is improved, whatever the illness, when the subject has cultivated a relaxed and philosophic attitude towards life, especially one accompanied by a sense of humor. Here's one other quote. This is my good friend Gilbert. And that's why I ask people. So this actually, it may not show up as well, and I'll have to probably read it from here, but on Monday nights I play in the South Coast Jazz Orchestra, which is part of my stress reduction program. And we've been doing it for 5 years. And we play at Guilderstone Rooster in Marion, Massachusetts. Now Gilda is 90 years old, and she has more energy than I could ever hope to have. So as I try to learn from other people, for everybody, I said, send me some messages in terms of what the meaning of life is, or how to live a happy life. So this came from several different emails or text messages that she sent me. So I'll read this to you. Life is beautiful. Don't let it slip by. Sure, life has its ups and downs. I've been there, and sometimes you need to pick yourself up. Take care of your body with exercise, which will take away your frustrations and get your body in gear. Avoid junk food and eat healthy. Find your true friends who will make you feel alive and so happy. Forget your age and add a little wiggle to that walk. It's never too late. Enjoy what you have. If you follow these steps, I guarantee that you will become beautiful inside and out. And it really is. You know, it really is. So she hands that out to people that come to see us play. I didn't need to, she told us what we need to do. So what we all need to do is to dedicate ourselves to bringing awareness first, and then prevention. So prevention, in my mind, is the act of doing things that are going to avoid disease or unwellness. And for those that unfortunately are suffering, we need to help them recover. That's what we really need to do. So I really thank you for having me. This was a privilege and honor. And you know, I really think that we're all in this together. And I look towards working with all of you. You're all welcome to join the Bedford Wellness Initiative on Facebook. Our website is nbewell.com, which I try to update for people that don't do Facebook. But let's figure out how we can do this in a very unique way and overcome the challenges. This isn't about negative. And I mean that. This is about figuring out the opportunities that we have to transform ourselves, our coworkers, and our community. Thank you.
We have about 5 minutes for any questions, if any of you. I have a great list of all of the referrals that we had on there, the books and stuff, so don't feel like you have to jot them down. I can send them out to the group. Any questions for Dr. Rocha? Yes.
Thank you for your talk. I'm a registered dietitian who has transitioned into working in public health, working on policy systems and environmental change, so a lot of this speaks very loudly to me. I'm wondering if you have found, you touched a little bit on the concept of resilience and sort of building sort of personal ability to troubleshoot and manage stress throughout the day. Have you run into any resources for teaching resilience, books or websites or things like that for teaching resilience to children as they grow?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, one of them I know is Sitting Like the Frog, and the other one is Thich Nhat Hanh's book. I'm blanking. Oh, it's like a pebble. Something like, I'll come up with it later. I'll think about it later.
Sure.
But if you actually Google search or Amazon, they'll probably both come up together.
Okay.
And one of them has a CD, and like I said, the other one has you can use that app on your phone for $3.99. And it's simple, you're right. So when you're teaching meditation techniques, it needs to be accessible, right? And your attention span as a kid, the way you approach it is going to be very different. And so there are resources for doing that. And if you ever, Tim Donahue, really that's his passion with yoga kids, and he's doing a great job. I would reach out to him and to see what he's doing for working with kids. And he's been doing that in New Bedford Public Schools for several years. He's a good friend of mine. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Just to expand on that a little bit, anything for young adults, teenagers?
There's a little crossover on that. You know, so I don't know that there's really for like early teens. So you would probably explore those same resources and see how they would be applicable as best you can. Because then, you know, you start to get your teenagers and a little older. I don't know of any direct resources that I could point you.
Best practices to increase the laughing in the companies or organizations?
Call Loretta and have her come down. Or read her books. Actually, honestly, she's got about 5 books. You could have a book club that way.
You could call her.
Well, but really, I mean, no, but seriously, if you wanted to do something differently, have her, you may have only a few, relax, you have only a few minutes to live, do it as a book club. I mean, really, I mean, that's easy enough. You could really just get a bunch of copies of her book and review it, because I think that, I mean, there's so many pearls of wisdom in there that, you know, that would be one way to do
Okay,
it.
well, if you think of something, he has a, like I said, a website, and then there's some information on the table here for the Wellness Initiative. And there's the Fall River Fitness Challenge and the New Bedford one, so I just want to let everybody be mindful of that, and you know you can contact me directly if you have questions regarding both of those great events. So we're just going to take a quick break. I'll let you use the restrooms if needed. Feel free to refill on coffee, water, fruit, what have you. And then when we come back, Jessica is going to put a wiggle in our step and loosen us up a little bit. So,
Oh, boy.
thank you.